My son stole my cancer medication and sold it, so I kicked him out, but it turns out that my husband was the one behind it all along. I filed for divorce, so he started spreading rumors around me. At the time, I was battling stage 3 colon cancer and my husband and I were shelving out all our savings for medication. Well, I noticed one day that my meds had all been cleared out, and I instantly went into panic mode. I first looked in our bathroom and bedroom, then my son's room, and after searching I found a huge wad of cash hidden under his mattress. Due to stress and how loopy the medication made me, I figured this was enough evidence that my son stole it and was selling it. When he came home from college that day I told him to pack his things, and my husband stood beside me as we kicked him out. He pleaded that he was innocent, even reaching out to give me our sacred pinky promise, but for some reason I never listened. I bawled in my husband's arms, and he assured me that our son's actions were not because of our parenting. Soon, my symptoms began to worsen without my meds, and I grew desperate and noticed my husband David acting strange. He was avoiding me and locking himself often in his office. I poked around in his home office at times just to make sure it was kept clean, but in there I found something. It was a safe that I hadn't noticed before under his desk. I luckily guessed the code, and in there I found something that made my heart shatter. My meds were all placed at the bottom of the safe, and as if that wasn't enough, I also found a hidden phone. I unlocked it and saw his messages were the last thing he opened. In the messages, I read texts from an affair partner he'd been having for 3 years now. In these exchanges, he said that he had a plan to let me die from cancer so he could be with the mistress without any suspicion. After I found the pills and the phone, I heard the alarm go off at the front door, which signaled that he was back. I quickly put back the phone I had found and took the pills with me. I acted normal when I greeted David at the door. He gave me a forced grin and went straight to his office. I locked myself in the bathroom and bawled for hours. It was gut-wrenching. I puked, and he never came up to check on me once. In a way I was glad, because the thought of him made me sick. I found it in me to call up a lawyer to prepare for our divorce the next day. While he was at work, I went into his office to find the safe again. When I looked behind the desk, it wasn't where I found it at first. My heart dropped. I needed to gather evidence for my case against David. I searched the room and couldn't find the sage anymore. I looked throughout the house and moved furniture to see if he had moved it there. Then I got to our bedroom. I had lost hope by then, and jokingly I checked behind a painting that hung up above our bed. The painting was from my cousin as a wedding gift. It was of me and David on the beach that we got married at. I knew I looked high and low for this thing, and that's when I found a hole that David had cut into the wall behind the painting. Inside the hole was the safe that hid my meds and the burner phone. I grabbed it quickly and began to open it again. I took pictures of the messages proving that David was trying to unalive me by taking my meds and that he'd been having an affair with some woman for 3 years. After I got all the evidence that I needed from him, I returned the safe to the hole behind the painting. When he got home, he noticed that I had been looking and feeling better than I did before. He must have known that I started taking my medicine again, because he said, "You look well today." I laughed and said, "Glory to God," and went on my way before he could continue. The next day, I started taking David's stuff to a storage unit little by little so he wouldn't notice until I served him the divorce papers. After I moved the remaining stuff to the storage unit, I called the locksmith over to change the locks on the house. You should have seen the look on David's face when he got home. He kept banging on the door, demanding to be let inside, but I talked to him through the Ring doorbell and told him that I knew about him trying to unalive me, blaming the meds on our son and the affair. I almost choked on my tears trying to get those words out, but I stayed strong. At first, David acted like he didn't know what I was talking about, but after a little while he confessed everything. Little did he know that I had the camera recording him the entire time. This was the final piece of evidence that I needed to solidify my case. He begged me for another chance, but I told him that the key to the storage unit was under the mat and that he would find the divorce papers in the unit. I told him not to return to our house, or I would call the cops and tell them what he'd done to me. After that day, I cut all contact with David. He would often try to message me on Facebook or call me from no caller ID, but I blocked him on all my social media and from my number. If he wanted to talk to me, it would have to be through my lawyer. With David out of my house, I called my son Mark to apologize for everything that I put him through. He was just as shocked as I was when he found out about his dad pinning him for stealing the medication, but he said he understood where my assumptions came from due to his not-so-great history with stealing. I told him that he could move back into the house and that I would never kick him out again without having all of the facts. I asked him when we could meet up to talk in person, and he told me he was free that weekend. That weekend, I brought him back home, and we talked in the living room. He expressed how hard it was to be kicked out so abruptly and how hard it was not to be trusted even when you're doing everything right. I apologized for judging him and accusing him of taking the pills. We had a real heart-to-heart, and I knew that we were on the right track to getting back as close as we were before the incident. After Mark moved back in, I had to schedule an urgent appointment. One morning, I woke up in excruciating pain. The entire right side of my body was a bright cherry red, and I couldn't move. I had to call for Mark to get me out of bed. We went to the emergency room, and they gave me medicine for the pain and told me that the cancer had gotten worse since I had gone weeks without my meds.